Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Matthew Cooney, and I'll be reading from Genesis chapter 3 today from the Bible. It's the third day of the daily Bible reading series. I am reading from the New American Bible Revised Edition, NABRE today, and then we'll follow up with some discussion questions afterwards. I also read from the Bible app on my phone, but I'm reading on my computer right now, so if you want to look that up while I'm reading, you can certainly follow along. So hopefully you don't see me make too many mistakes. So yeah, I'd say let's get going. Genesis chapter 3, Expulsion from Eden. Now the snake was the most cunning of all wild animals that the Lord God had made. He asked the woman, God, did God really say, you shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden? The woman answered the snake, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. It is only about the fruit in the middle of the garden that God said, you shall not eat it, or even touch it, or else you will die. But the snake said to the woman, you certainly will not die. God knows well that when you eat it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like gods who know good and evil. The woman saw that the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eyes, and the tree was desirable for gaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. When they heard the sound of the Lord God walking, and in the garden at the breezy time of the day, the man and his wife hid themselves from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. The Lord God then called to the man and asked him, where are you? He answered, I heard you in the garden, but I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. Then God asked, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I have forbidden you to eat? The man replied, the woman whom you put here with me, she gave me the fruit from the tree, so I ate it. The Lord God then asked the woman, what is this you have done? The woman answered, the snake tricked me, so I ate it. Then the Lord God said to the snake, because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals, tame or wild. On your belly you shall crawl, and dust you shall eat all of the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. They will strike at your head while you strike at their heels. To the woman he said, I will intensify the toil of your childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth child. Yet your urge shall be for your husband. He shall rule over you. To the man he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat from its yield all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bear for you, and you shall eat the grass of the field. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread until you return to the ground from which you were taken, from dust, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. The man gave his wife the name Eve because she was the mother of all living things. The Lord God made for this the man and his wife garments of skin, which he clothed them. Then the Lord God said, see, the man became like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now, what if he also reaches out his hand to take fruit from the tree of life and eats of it and lives forever? The Lord God therefore banished him from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he had been taken. He expelled the man, stationing the cherubim and the fire-revolving sword of the Garden of Eden to guard the way to the tree of life. I think there's a lot to take away and kind of unpack from this chapter. So my first question I have written down, the same as the last 2 days, is how has chapter 3 of Genesis surprised you? So I'm not going to lie, I've read Genesis throughout my life quite a few times, so there's nothing that was super surprising, that I never heard from watching videos and also reading about it. But in verse 6, where Eve eats the fruit of good and evil, she immediately shares it with Adam, quoted saying, "So she took some of its fruit and ate it, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it." So I believe in, starting from verse 2, Eve replies to the snake, which is the devil, and, the snake convinces her that God never really said that you would die. He's lying. And so, when you read verse 6, you're wondering, my first question is, Adam, what are you doing? Get your wife, man. Why would you allow her to fall in this sin? These rules were not quite established yet, but you are one. This rule was established in chapter 2. You guys are one. She is a part of you. You are a part of her. Why are you not stopping her from disobeying God? So I think that's, and obviously Adam is handed the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, and that's why he's also punished by God. But I do believe God's punishment is partly also because he entrusted Adam with this very specifically. I'm sure he told Eve, this is a no-go zone, but Adam knew, and he allowed his wife to fall in sin. So I do find that, a little surprising, Adam, you'd think you'd be on your game. So I did also think about, obviously it talks about when they both ate it, then the realization of them being naked overtook them, and that's when they clothed themselves and hid themselves in the trees when God was walking by. So that is what I assume, and obviously I'm going to take that, for its word, but it is interesting to think about and this is human nature, so this is no shade on Eve. I think all of us would do this, whether we'd claim to or not. If the fruit did take effect and she was the only one who had succumbed to this knowledge of good and evil, I cannot imagine the amount of shame and desperation of being all alone in this sin, because she is now she might be realizing the weight of sin she just took on, and she could not bear it alone. So I certainly would not demonize Eve for that, because that's horrible. I can't imagine that weight. So sharing it with Adam, if she did realize what she was doing, that kind of sucks. But at the same time, realizing the kind of mistake the choice she made, not mistake, the choice she made, I think would be pretty overwhelming. And obviously it says she didn't, it doesn't necessarily say she didn't realize what she was doing, but, her and Adam both sinned, because Adam definitely knew, and he still was like, I'm going to do this. So that's kind of surprising to me that, Adam sees God do all these things, to some level, and he's still like, yeah, I'm going to do it after my wife did. So surprising there. Second question, are there certain phrases or verses within Genesis chapter 3 that made you take pause? I'd say the difference between Adam and Eve's punishment, God could have been uniform about it, but instead he kind of, he makes it personalized. And so, ironically, God is a personal being, so maybe his punishment is personalized, which I honestly think is better for us anyway. But, obviously God, says he'll make Eve's childbirth more painful, and Adam's labor, which would be working in the fields during this time, will now gain him little and be harder. So his labor will be toilsome, and so will Eve's childbirthing will be more painful. And it also talks about that they will be stricken on the head by their children, and they will strike back at their heels. So the animosity, maybe not animosity necessarily, but the disagreements and the disobedience of child and parent is now going to be expressed. And you see this, I have been, you have been, and if not, well, you're awesome, so thank you. But that's why it's one of the 10 commandments, because it is so serious, and God understands that because of Adam and Eve, we are kind of prone to disobedience, and that is also disobedience of our parents. So he wanted to kind of try to correct that, as he is doing all throughout time after Adam and Eve. He's trying to correct our mistakes, or help us and follow his commandments, which I think is pretty awesome of him. And then how has chapter 3 of Genesis altered your understanding or thinking? I'd say although Adam and Eve were the only ones to sin, or first sin, hence why we call it original sin, and we believe we're all born with it, we all share the same fate and punishment. And so some might say, well, Adam and Eve's sin should not carry over to our sin. But even if you want to try to believe spiritually that sin isn't carried over, we see it in the world today. Sin of our sin does carry over to people, whether we want it to or not. So if I were to sin against someone, I carry the burden of the spiritual sin, but the person I hurt still carries the consequences of my sin because I hurt them. So maybe they are now emotionally hurt, maybe they're physically hurt, or maybe they're even spiritually hurt, not by the weight of that sin, but the action of that sin. So they are not spiritually hurt by me sinning in the sense that it's their sin, it's not. But now, spiritually, they can disconnect themselves from God, saying, how can a man or a woman of God hurt me so badly? Lord, I can't put my faith in you, or my faith is lessened because your supposed servant and child did this to me. So I can't, So I think using that example, and I'm sure there's a bunch more examples, and of course all these questions are for you guys as well. If you have any questions of my answers, because I'm not a theologian, I am just trying to learn as much as you guys are trying to learn, while reading these wonderful chapters and verses and books within the Bible over, and I'm trying to share these things because the more I get called out for being wrong or right, the more I can be like, okay, awesome, I can keep saying this, and the more I get wrong, I can be like, okay, the more I can change this to be right, to be closer to the truth of God within the context of the Bible. So I'd say that's all. I think you could definitely go into way more depth of this chapter. I think you don't think the first 3 chapters of a book, well, in a normal book, yes, because a normal book's 150 to 350 pages, but I can't imagine how many words are in just the first book of Genesis. But these 3 chapters, you don't initially think, because it's the start of creation, there's too much depth, or it can be even hours and hours spent on one chapter. I think if you really took the time to dive into it, you'll find it, and I love that for you. So please read them, and by yourself as well, with other groups of people, and see what you think. And so I do have a comment section in the post, so if you want to tell me what you thought, or how you interpret it, I would love to hear that in your own life. So that'd be wonderful. So I guess that's it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.